Mind Over Music. I'm your host, Sean Ali Moladina. So happy to be with everyone. This evening, you're listening to Radio Azad, where your voice matters. I'm your host, Sean Ali Moladina. We are about to get into an incredible discussion. Man, I cannot wait. Okay, so this is the composer of a new production that just came out a few years ago called Shams. It is a transformative experience. I cannot wait for everybody to come out and watch this this incredible ensemble in the show. We are here with Sabah Aminikia. You are the composer, you are the voice, you are the narrator of Rumi. You started this journey by transforming Sam Brookman's life. And he is the artistic director and founder of Verdigris Ensemble. We just interviewed him just a moment ago. And I want to talk to you about this idea of transformation. But, you do the voice of Rumi, for Shams. How did that, being able to get into Rumi's mind, how he saw Shams the Brace, the love that he had for him, the yearning, the trust, the safety, the security, everything just pouring into this relationship. Let's dive deep. Let's get into the deeper waters here. How did that transform you as a composer, man?
Well, I have to mention that the source of the process is the love itself.
Yeah.
And this piece I definitely wrote as a portrayal of an experience that I had, a personal experience. I experienced true love, in my own opinion.
Yeah.
And the way that I know it was true love, because it transformed me. I was a very different person.
Yeah.
And since 6 years ago, I started a festival for children on Turkish-Syrian border, and I'm working with them. And this woman that I was introduced to, she introduced me to humanity, as Shams did for Rumi, actually.
Yeah.
Because Rumi was a man of book and intellect and religion and hierarchy.
Yes.
Religious hierarchy.
Yes.
And he was in Konya. His father was exiled from Balkh, and he traveled through this area through Iran, and he met Attar on the way, and he became familiarized with the language of the birds, or conference of the birds, and seven valleys of love. Exactly.
Yes.
So he was very much impressed, actually, by Islam, by Sufism, and by Taoism and Buddhism. In fact, actually, he read Tao actually during this, and he was a child when he was passing through Iran, and eventually he ends up in Konya, and that's where even today, this whole hierarchy of religious Sufi mentality exists, which actually is one of the few Sunni Sufi actually circles, because Sufis are mostly actually in
Shia.
Iran and Pakistan. Yes, it's more of a political resistance against Sunnis, but it turned into this free spirit movement that started in 10th century with Mansur Hallaj in Damascus, and how and it was very different when it initiated, and later it became more of a way of governing in Iran. The whole Safaviya dynasty was actually were Sufis, and anything that is has such vast, basically, size, like Sufism, when it becomes more like established and part of establishment, it becomes more political and more power.
This is really interesting, because it's so funny. I was talking literally last night. We were driving from Houston to Dallas. I was talking about Mansur al-Hallaj to my mom. And the audacity of saying Anal Haq. How do you scale governance with something that is so mystical in nature?
Absolutely. I think it's totally in contradiction. And actually that's why Mansur Hallaj was killed, actually, in the most horrific way, actually.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was mentioning that I am the God, in fact, was that ultimate, joining the beloved. And that's what he experienced. And that's what Rumi experienced. That was Shams, or most of the Sufis experienced.
Yeah.
But the generation that they rose in 10th century that Mansur Hallaj were far more open-minded than even the Sufis in 12th century, 14th century. Rumi is more of a late 12th century, actually, Sufi master. And he, after establishing this hierarchy, that's another process that he was introduced to Shams. He meets Shams, who is a wanderer and is traveling, and he's looking for someone like him that can reflect him, like a mirror.
A mirror.
He's looking for a mirror.
Yes.
And he meets Shams, and Shams is kind of this kind of very radical, almost clownish character.
Right.
That
Young, just free spirited.
absolutely.
Yes,
And
yes.
he says, for example, there's this famous story. There are many ways to say it, but when he sees all the books that Rumi was reading, he asks him that if he has read all the books, and he said yes. And he said, "Why do you keep them?" So he throws them in the pool, the water pool over there, and
Right.
Rumi gets freaked out because what Shams does, in fact, brings Rumi from like purely intellectual abstract concept into love of humanity in
Yes.
people. And that's, I think, a process that should happen for everyone, in fact.
You know, there's a difference between realization and actualization. And I
Absolutely.
think that's the bridge that Shams offered to Rumi. And
Absolutely.
Rumi just like dove into it, right? It's this idea that it's not only about understanding transformation, it is surrendering to the transformation.
Very
It's
true.
submission, right? Of this. When you think about and we talked about this briefly, you know, you said that there are more works, compositions, and books of Rumi in Iranian households than there are Qurans.
Absolutely.
Right? Talk
actually.
to me about that. You know, it's such a pervasive culture and understanding and this love, because it has to be there, you know,
Absolutely.
and you know, it kind of goes into like who Iranians really are at their core, is just this understanding of this free spirit and this love, right? And the reality of things today is just so far away from where we were in the 12th century, right?
It is, but also it's not at the same
Right.
time.
Tell me,
Because when I came to the US 20 years ago, and when I see how Iran is portrayed in the media and generally Middle East, you
Yes.
know, if you're Kurdish, Arab, or Iranian, doesn't matter. They all
Right.
look
Yeah,
the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Same.
But when you look at this and you realize that like people have this understanding that we are fanatic religious people, and it's absolutely has never been true, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, Iranian people for the last 50 years after the Islamic Revolution, they've been fighting against the system from the beginning. And in fact, Iranians are more Sufis than they are Muslims, in fact. So it's a common tradition in Iran, and I might be the first person who's announcing it on radio. But the fact is that every Muslim I knew was drinking wine, and they would go wash their mouth and they say their prayer.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
this is a common practice, but it actually comes from poetry of Hafiz and Rumi.
Oh, wow.
That you get this drunkenness, this state of drunkenness that you don't know if it's about God or it's about actual wine. And I love that, actually.
Yes, it's the intoxication.
Exactly.
Yes.
But it also gives you kind of a break as a humanity. And it introduces you to a range of behavior that you can choose. So you can be fond of love, you can be passionate and in love with the ultimate beloved, but also you can drink wine. And and that can, it's a very different way of consumption of alcohol than it's just for forgetting and for the kind of this.
Yeah, you know, this is something that I've thought about, struggled with, you know, been through it in my own ways, understanding the difference between drinking due to trauma, right? Being intoxicated because of trauma, trying to forget, and then looking for an experience, and understanding that this is a way of creating intoxication in submission, right? In the act of love for the beloved. You know, we have movies, Bollywood movies. I don't know if you've ever seen Devdas, but Devdas is played by Shah Rukh Khan, and Shah Rukh Khan's the best. And you know, he lost his beloved, the silsila chahat ka, right? This like this connection that he had with his beloved. And he literally like drank himself to death in longing of that love. And I think that's a very extreme example of this. But, you know, there is something to be said about intoxifying yourself, creating this environment, this mental environment where you are doing it as an act of submission, right? An act of love, an act of a prayer, essentially. How do you reconcile that? You know, and because you're called a heretic, and you know, it's, you know, it's a slippery slope from that standpoint. How does the culture kind of inculcate that and absorb that?
I'm in the Iranian culture, I'm not sure, because it's always been there. You know, there are things always in there that never change. Imagine this country has experienced 8 major invasions,
Mhm.
and they still celebrate Zoroastrian traditions from
yes.
pre-Islamic period.
Yeah,
Which
that's
is
what Nowruz is.
exactly
Yeah.
Nowruz and the whole period of 13 days, and
Yeah.
this is all these traditions.
Yeah.
And some of them, they don't even have a root in Zoroastrianism,
Right.
such as Charshambe Suri, like the
Yeah.
Wednesday that people go jump over the fire.
Yes.
It actually never existed in Zoroastrianism,
Really?
but it has
Wow.
notions of pre-Islamic period and
Yeah.
this Enlightenment period.
Right.
And imagine that Iran was originally a Mithraist
Mhm.
country. Mithraism was the main religion even before Zoroastrianism.
Oh.
It's a religion came from West India and that region actually in the European
Mhm.
religion. And this concept of shams and concept of sun,
Mhm.
in fact, actually it goes way beyond Rumi. And actually it goes because the symbol of Mitra himself,
Yeah.
or Ain Mehr, we call it in Iran,
Yes.
and many actually part of the Roman Empire, actually they had temples and they were still praying towards Mitra is Shams. It's the sun actually. So when you see the Persian carpet, there is always a sun in the middle. That's the symbol of Mithra actually.
Wow.
And every actually symbol that you see on Persian carpet comes from one aspect of the culture. In
That's
fact,
so beautiful.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting because my mentor's name is Shamshuddin.
Oh
Yeah, this comes from the same idea, right?
Absolutely.
All the poetry that Rumi created was after he met Shams Tabriz.
Absolutely.
And what talk to me about that part of it, but then also I want you to connect, how in the performance you're literally seeing the world as Rumi. How has that transformed? Like, how has that transformed your spiritual experience, your human experience, how you see the audience react to you now inculcating, embodying Rumi, the voice of Rumi, the attitude of the perspective of Rumi? It must be so beautiful.
It is very beautiful. And I have to tell you, in my own process, it might sound crazy to you, but the fact is that we chose the topic with Sam, and we wanted to work on this. And I'm almost confident after that, and this is kind of a belief system.
Yes.
And I feel that the Rumi will run the project. And he did, actually. And I do this in many of my projects, because when you show sincerity and honesty towards a subject and you are submitting to that transformation through poetry and love, which is the essence of every religion, everything beyond this world, in fact, is about. Logic is the part of humanity that stops us actually from pursuing magic in this world, because we live in a very extraordinary, magical world. And we are constantly trying to kind of break it down to something that we understand.
Right.
And
science.
Yes. For example, that guy that you mentioned that he drank himself to death out of love. It seems the most illogical thing.
Right.
But to another person who's a lover,
it's the moth that's drawn to the flame.
Absolutely. Beautiful example.
Right? It is. Okay. So do you, in the play, do you guys have, or in the production, do you guys have the reed? Do you guys talk about the reed? The wooden reed?
I actually wrote a new piece for them, which is part of their educational actually process. They're doing it with a high school choir, and it's actually the first part from actually Diwan Shams, which is the Neyname actually. It's about the reed that is singing this song. So the reed, the flute, reed flute is actually always kind of symbolizes the body of human, and how when the person who's a ney player and they play the ney, they are blowing the spirit of God, the godly spirit into the kalbad, or to the body of humanity, and then the music starts.
Wow.
That's beautiful. And Rumi always mentions that you have to be as empty as possible, so this sound would pass. So I want to bring up another point, because this exactly is another quote by my very favorite composer, Terry Riley, that he talks about how when you take over and you take ownership of your music or your own voice or what you're creating, the channel would immediately close, because you are just the channel that you have to keep yourself empty and selfless. And then that divine spirit would be passing
fills
through
you. Exactly. Passes through you.
The moment you try to capitalize on that music or that art, it immediately closes, and I felt it.
Yes,
You
yes,
know?
because it is not yours. It is not yours to keep. It is yours to
Exactly.
experience, and it comes through you. It comes from you, through you, and then out of you. Right? It's a transformative energy.
Absolutely. As a musician, I think that's what you do actually.
Yeah.
You are there to serve the humanity.
Yes.
I'm not there to create something that people would know what I do in my alone
Right.
time.
No.
I just want to create something that talks for both to the past and to the future.
This is beautiful.
And love is the most unifying concept. So imagine bringing this concept to Dallas,
Yes.
which many of my colleagues in California thought might not be the best place for representing Rumi. It actually happened to be the best place, better than New York, better than San Francisco. I had a line of people, like tall men with cowboy hats, hugging me after the performance because
And that was
and crying on my shoulders because they felt so close to me. And that's what humanity is all about.
Yes.
And I really believe that we have to explore more similarities
Yes.
and less differences in our life, because the similarities are overwhelming and so beautiful and poetic. When I read Lawrence Ferlinghetti, when I read Allen Ginsberg, I get the same feeling that I get from Hafiz and Rumi. So it shows that how West and East, they are the same thing, in fact, according to Professor Edward Said.
Love, but like love is the language.
Absolutely.
I know love is the experience that kind of brings everybody together, and it's this lack of love, this lack of safety, this lack of having that understanding that creates the fear that pulls away from it. Right. I was going to ask you about the audience's reaction. You mentioned the tall cowboy hat, tall men, the cowboy. Like how when you're interacting with the audience, what does that feel like? Are you seeing this transformation? Are you kind of witnessing it yourself? Do you feel the energy coming from the audience in the
Absolutely.
Talk to me about that.
I had it. It was a beautiful transformation. The last 20 years that I've lived in this country.
Yeah.
Because the moment you see yourself from the perspective of other people, I look differently. I'm not the typical, artist of Texas or, Dallas. But the moment that you give that up, you let that go, and you look into people's eyes as they are your beloved.
Yes.
They see themselves in your eyes and feel more beautiful.
That's the mirror.
And that's how it connects everything together. You're in Japan, or you're in Dallas, or you're in Saudi Arabia, and you look into people's eyes and you tell them that you love them. They feel loved, and all the logic washes away. The things that separates us, all this history and pessimism. Imagine, same in Pakistan or Iran, we are very old countries. And with that heritage comes also 2,000-3,000 years of pessimism. So it's really great to read more Rumi, read more Shams, and open ourselves up also as Middle Eastern people with this rich heritage that you're coming from. And a
loving heritage.
Exactly.
That never gets the light of day in the media today.
Absolutely. It's all I grew up in Iran for 26 years, and I grew up through a difficult time, revolution, war with Iraq, but all I experienced was poetry and beautiful people and music and people that they gave everything up in their life for truth, for beauty. I come from a Baha'i family in Iran, and they're heavily persecuted for the last 200 years. So that adds to my experience, because people who are persecuted in any society, they find very beautiful and artistic ways to survive.
Yes.
So music has been always a method of survival for me. It never was something that I want to capitalize on or I want to sell it. I just want to share this beautiful heritage that we all share from Pakistan, Afghanistan,
it's amazing.
Turkish, Kurdish, Arabs. We all share this beauty. I really believe in the Middle East one day that we are all part of one entity, and we see how close we are. We are neighbors, and we don't understand how close we are to each other.
Right. And we look the same. We eat the same foods. We have the same cultural understanding, the nuances behind it. There's more that connects us than breaks us apart.
Absolutely.
I believe. And it's so important. We have. I'm of the Ismaili faith. I don't know if so Aga Khani is what sometimes people say, but it's the same thing. Like years and years of persecution, right? We had this whole era called Dorul Satar, where it was a period of hiding, and we couldn't even reveal that we had a living imam. So it was very, very interesting.
But Baha'is have some roots also in Ismaili,
right?
And also my condolences for
It's still very. Oh my gosh, yeah. yeah. That
What
yeah,
a beautiful, enlightened person. And what I love about our Khan Foundation and Smile is that they're so supportive of arts and music and beauty. And that speaks immediately of this superb mentality and intellectuality in a
Yeah.
person. When you appreciate beauty, I think in any culture and any geography, that's what connects you to the humanity and to the larger spirit that
Yeah.
is shared between all of us as humans.
Yeah. I feel so lucky to have been born in this religion and like
Absolutely.
be a part of the culture and the faith. It really is like transformed my entire perspective of what it means to be not only a human but a humanitarian, a connected human. You know, to have to aspire to what we call hakikati samaj, right?
Yes.
Like to try to learn and understand the truth. And like Sam and I, we just talked about Mansur al-Halaj and how it was so audacious for him to say anal haq, right? and but to be lost in that in that divine spirit, in the intoxication of that divine spirit, and to seek for that, and to kind of aim your sights, your ambitions to love, right? And to transformation.
That's how love transforms you. If you
Yeah.
don't completely dissolve yourself and
Yeah.
submit, because you
Yes.
meet a person or an entity or a spiritual entity that it's just a river.
Yes.
There is no resistance in love. You cannot calculate, you cannot be logical about
Yes,
it.
you cannot control it.
It takes you away.
Yes.
And that takes you away and it requires that submission towards beauty that you should carry. And after that, you just go with this river and you experience parts of humanity that you would never experience unless you love someone.
Yes.
This is true about political discussion and social discussion.
Talk more about
You
that.
can talk and discuss and just fight over things and you never persuade each other.
Right.
But the moment of love between two people, persuade them to do anything.
Anything. It's so
and they,
easy.
Exactly. And they would agree with your values when they love you.
Yes.
When the love does not exist and it's all about tension and confrontation, it's just a war, and that's equivalent of a war.
Yeah.
But when you can actually love people and connect them, look them in the eyes and tell them you love them and you're saying what you're saying because truth matters anymore,
right.
then people have a different understanding of how you feel.
Yeah.
And this is true about the recent events, for example, in Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
And how Palestinian people looked at, because we always see this media coverage of terroristic groups, but you have to imagine that there is a gigantic population of civilians and children,
women,
and I'm
children.
as sympathetic for them as the children who were killed in 7th of October in Israel in absolute violence. Violence is never the answer, but it's very easy to radicalize and make people violent.
Yes.
Especially in societies that young people are deprived of basic necessities and education in their life. It's so simple for people to drag them towards violence. And
absolutely, when it's where hope takes root, right? When you leave children, young people, countries, societies, and you strip them of hope, that can easily radicalize any group of people. It's the ability to kind of see people, look into their eyes, give them love, give them the basic necessities. That's the olive branch. And it's interesting because, and he's a very controversial figure, but Elon Musk talked about this. He said the only way that we could solve this is through radical generosity. Like
I love that actually.
I love that too. I was like, he's telling Israel, you have
revolutionary
to be
love.
Yes, you have to be radically generous.
Yes.
To Hamas and not to Hamas, but to the people of Palestine.
If Israel at that point showed some restraint towards that, would have revolutionized
everything.
Humanity.
It would have changed everything. And it's not that it gets rid of the history or it diminishes the history by any means, but it does give you a path forward.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of where everything, that's where hope takes root.
Alijan, I work in an area of work with Syrian children, and about 3 million of them in Turkey, and I can see that a child there can be easily, because when there is no identity, you can immediately be drawn to anything. If one gives you money, gives you a weapon, if it's army or a terroristic group, you want some identity in this world. And for children that never experience that, but at the same time, if you give them a musical instrument, they become a musician. So they would find that dedication, your weapon of choice, dancing. And that's what we are doing through our festival, Flying Carpet Festival in Turkey.
That's so beautiful. Talk to me about that as well, if you can.
Of course, it's the first mobile festival for children in conflict zones. I'm a TED fellow since last year for this. I had a TED talk about the Flying Carpet Festival. We are a artist residency that we bring 40 to 50 artists from all around the world.
Yes.
And we create a cohesive storytelling experience for children in their own language with live music, dance, circus. That I work with a circus organization in Turkey that they work with refugee children.
Wow.
And we incorporate children into our performances. So in July, I'm going there I'm continuing with my choir.
Yeah.
And it's a number of 15 children. And when the artists come in August, they perform each other with
That's
each other.
so cool.
And we toured this performance in 9 different locations in the Mesopotamia.
No way. So when is it going to be in July?
August 29th to September 10th, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can check out our website, flyingcarpetfestival.org.
Yeah, amazing. I'm going to be in Turkey at the end of July.
God,
so I'm gonna so I'm gonna
visit.
come hang out.
I would love
Yeah,
it.
this is
Would
gonna be
love
great.
to have you as a
Oh
guest.
man, guys, this is gonna be so much fun. Okay,
Amazing.
so but before that, it's gonna be May 23rd to the 25th.
Absolutely.
Shams, this beautiful. I cannot wait for this production to come to life.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be so much fun. So come join us, Shams, May 23rd to 25th at the Moody Performance Hall. It's located here in Dallas at 2520 Flora Street. And it's going to be talking about the 7 stages of love between Rumi and his mentor, Shams Tabriz. Tickets are on sale at Verdigris, VERDIGRIS music.org. Come experience something that's going to be absolutely transformational. Bring your mirror with you.
Absolutely.
And see yourself through this production, through the divine inspiration and expression of love through Rumi and through Shams Tabriz. So, man, Saba,
great
Saba,
to meet you,
freaking amazing, man. This is great. All right, so more to come, and I can't wait to also visit you in Turkey and go into and it's called the
Flying Carpet Festival.
Flying Carpet Festival. Okay, Flying Carpet Festival, and it's going to be all over Mesopotamia. I can't wait for that either. It's going to be in August, at the end of August and early September. So more to come, and hopefully we will have a completely sold out 3 days of performances.
Please come join us.
Yes, it's going to be amazing. All right, Saba Amanika, thank you so much for joining our show tonight.